That's not trial by ambush. That's getting duped.
The Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern.
New information about Karen Read's defense team is giving the judge grave concern. Now she must determine whether a fraud on the court was committed. We'll discuss. And the prosecution is fighting back against the witness harassment and bullying that's been going on, calling out the embattled protester and defendant known as Turtle Boy, saying that he has a symbiotic relationship with defendant Karen Read. A new twist, so to speak, in the Karen Read case. A motions hearing on Tuesday abruptly ending after Judge Beverly Cannoni learned information that gave her grave concern.
The Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel. So for that reason, I'm going to suspend today so that when we meet again to address these issues, all affected will be appropriately prepared. So I'll see you a week from today at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Now, it's hard to see because of our banner at the bottom of the screen, but the judge was shaking there. She was actually visibly shaking. She had her eyeglasses in her hand and was shaking, having what seems to be a visceral reaction to this news. So here's what it's about. Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan revealed that the ARCA experts, remember these guys, they were great witnesses for the defense in the first trial. Well, the defense team at the first trial had represented to the court that they were completely independent. They had represented that they had not had trial preparation work with them, that they were not paying them, that they were hired by the federal government, and that they were completely unbiased, independent witnesses. Well, that turned out not to be true. Hank Brennan alerting to the court communications that did go on, discussions about what to say and not to say in the courtroom, and they'd been paid $23,000.
I'm not saying that undermines the conclusions of ARCA, or not. I'm not saying they're not qualified witnesses, but it certainly shows some bias. Statistically speaking, most pedestrian fatalities occur during the evening and night hours. That would have been nice to have. And then he comments, if you don't want me to say this, that's fine. That's fine. Shh, don't tell them. And then a bill from ARCA to the defense for $23,925. That's not trample. That's not trial by ambush. That's getting duped.
This is incredibly serious, what happened here, because lawyers take an oath to act as officers of the court and must act with honesty and integrity at all times. And so now there's a question of whether a deliberate misrepresentation was made. That is the question. The judge has to determine whether there was a fraud perpetrated on the court by these attorneys. That is the question. And so she's requesting all parties reconvene next week. She's giving everyone time to prepare, and she noted that she wants to see all those communications that Attorney Hank Brennan had received from the federal government that showed the talks that were in fact had between Karen Read's lawyers and those ARCA witnesses who were represented to be independent. Now let's talk about this. I have two great guests standing by. I want to bring them in now. The former head of the homicide unit in the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. He's in private practice now in Massachusetts. Attorney Rick Grundy is with us. And nationally known radio host. He's also the creator and the host of the show Road Patrol Live, John DePetro. Good morning to you both. I want to start, please, with your reactions to what we saw yesterday with respect to what Hank Brennan revealed about these ARCA witnesses and the defense attorneys. And John DePetro, I'm going to start with you, please.
You know, Julie, this was so significant, and just the visual of what you were just showing on the screen, Alan Jackson, and people need to understand, Alan Jackson, he is the defense. He's the face of the defense. He's, as I would describe, he's like the straw that stirs the drink. He was beat red during this whole thing. When Hank Brennan let this out, Julie, I think also the judge, I was in court when the ARCA experts were there. I think there was something about her gut that told her that there was something fishy about this whole thing. And then fast forward, and then it all comes out in court. This is very, very significant because this never really made sense of how they came away with something very different that essentially the state police came away with, and what just common sense said, that she did in fact hit him with the car. But Alan Jackson beat red. And also, if you look in the corner of the screen where Peg O'Keefe, Julie, huge smile. That's the most I've seen her smile in a very, very long time. Peg O'Keefe, mother of John O'Keefe, recognizing how significant this was. This was a judge, I think. I think this boots Jackson. And I also think Unetti's in trouble. And one more thing I just want to point out.
Sure.
Not only was the reaction of normally they would leap up, Your Honor, I strongly object to what we hear. They were dead silent. You could tell Jackson, very uncharacteristically quiet. Unetti just staring straight ahead. This, maybe feels that this isn't, he's the one of his making. But their non-reaction, I found very significant.
Excellent points, John. And we're going to talk about what implications could come. As you both know, this is as serious as it gets if there's a misrepresentation made to a court of law. And so we're going to talk about all of that. John, thank you. I want to play the moment, that moment where it was all revealed. Let's watch.
On June 10, 2024, you asked the defense about ARCA, and it was represented these experts were hired by the federal government, and they provided a report to us pursuant to a TUI request. It was specifically outlined and ruled that they could not prep with us for trial.
That they could not prep with us for trial. So
I'm to believe that the defense is calling 3 witnesses that you've never spoken to and putting them on the stand here
that's essentially it. We've spoken to them only for the purposes of coordination of their testimony and their background. That's it.
Do you see what we did here? We went back in time. We pulled that video that Hank Brennan referenced yesterday, that moment where the representation is made. Rick Grundy, let me go to you next for your reaction, please.
Well, it's interesting to see how these things play out. We're going to get a dog and pony show on the 25th from the defense about how this was misinterpreted, that this all comes out of this discovery issue with these folks. But it certainly seems that the smoking gun is there. And in looking at the motion of the Commonwealth and the opposition filed by Alan Jackson, I think the prosecution put a little bit of a Trojan horse in there because I believe it was on the 14th of February, they file a motion reigniting the issue that with respect to these individuals and their outfit, they want discovery. And the defense who's calling them has not provided any further discovery. Within that motion, there is no mention of these communications that run afoul.
Oh, and we just lost you again there, Rick. We're having some troubles with your signal. Going back to that moment in time, because I wondered when Hank Brennan was talking about it, I was trying to remember, was that a moment we saw in court? And we did see it. We went back, Court TV went back, finding that video. So the judge is going to remember this very clearly, as you said, John DePetro. She remembers asking them clearly, are these independent witnesses that you were not paying, essentially? And David Unetti, you used the word essentially. Essentially, yes, we haven't had time to prep with them, haven't had communications, but yet it was revealed, as you know, John, that the ARCA witnesses had back and forth discussions with Alan Jackson about what to say and not say. And so now the concern, Hank Brennan was very precise, saying, I'm not trying to prevent the ARCA witnesses from coming in. I'm exposing what seems to be bias that was covered up. John, how do you think Judge Cannoni is reacting to this when she went into chambers and came out shaking?
You know what, Julie? I think she really saw that just the clip you played, and that's a great clip that you grabbed, that she even had reservations and found it a little hard to believe. And I think she wanted to reiterate and make sure that she had asked the proper questions. But make no mistake about it, what was revealed was there was communication, and he was basically communicating with the defense that Daniel Wolf of, you basically tell me, what you want me to say. I can frame it a certain way. He even raised that, in case I didn't really examine the car, if they bring that up, here's how we get around it. I think this is very significant, Julie. And, Alan Jackson, I think he was, he's been difficult. At times he's taken over the courtroom. I think the judge was aghast that basically that these were not only proven, but it really showed that they kind of pulled one over on her. So that's, as someone that has watched her for countless hours, that is the most visibly shaken that I have seen this judge, who, again, very calm, cool, collected. I think she wanted to make sure she had all her ducks in a row. But make no mistake about it, what Hank Brennan exposed was they were disingenuous, misled the court when they said they had not been communicating with that witness.
John, you're so right. And as you know, this can have far-reaching implications, as Her Honor alluded to. I believe her words were this can potentially have big impact, she said, on defense and defense counsel. Depending upon what the court finds, as you know, John, counsel could be removed. I mean, if there is a situation of fraud on a court, I mean, John, lawyers, they can be disbarred. I mean, it can have far-reaching consequences here. So this is as serious as it gets. And there was more in that hearing yesterday, as you know, John. This was just one of those big moments. So you're going to stick with us, and we're going to turn to the other big moment right after the break, as this motions hearing turned into a pivotal day in the case over the death of Officer John O'Keefe.
Because not one, but two doctors, trained pathologists, who have looked at thousands of autopsy photos and testified in thousands of cases, all agree those are dogfights on John's life.
The case against Karen Reed is what's trending in true crime this morning. Welcome back. The Commonwealth, in that pivotal motions hearing on Tuesday, revealing to the court and to everybody watching that her defense team has a symbiotic relationship with the blogger and defendant and protesters you saw there, Aiden Kearney, also known as Turtle Boy. Now, Reed's defense team petitioning to add an attorney named Mark Betterow to their team, who represents Turtle Boy in his witness harassment case. Now, all the witnesses who were the victims in his case are the witnesses in Karen Reed's case. Now, Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan spoke up, saying he doesn't oppose Betterow's addition to the team, but alerted the court to the connection to Turtle Boy.
There is a history, a symbiotic relationship between Ms. Reed and Mr. Kearney. There is a history of documented evidence showing the sharing of discovery between the parties. And being in a position of representing two different defendants who are not co-defendants, being in that position is going to be a difficult task to manage, and I am worried, and I have good reason to be worried about the privacy of our protected material. I have good reason to be concerned about the improper dissemination of our material. I have a reason to be concerned about the continued harassment and bullying of witnesses, and this information, if a court order won't protect it, then nothing will.
That moment gave me chills. That was a moment where he was standing up and fighting for all of those innocent people who've been unnecessarily and unfairly bullied and harassed because of them being willing to come forward and swear under oath and tell the truth about what happened the night John O'Keefe was killed. So now, let's talk about what should happen. Hank Brennan is so smart. He might be the most precise prosecutor I've ever seen in my life. He said to the court, I don't oppose that attorney coming in. They want that attorney to come in. Every defendant has a right to counsel of their choosing. What I'm suggesting is that the court take a look, and that we, the Commonwealth, don't even need to be there when you do. Just take a look at the relationship going on between Karen Reed and Turtle Boy and their attorneys. He even noted that Karen Reed's attorneys, the two of them, Yannetti and Jackson, having numerous calls, I believe he said 29 calls each of them with Turtle Boy. And we know Karen Reed had hundreds of calls with him. Show is over, said Hank Brennan. Now, what should the court do? Should they ex parte, as Hank Brennan suggested, look into this relationship? Because there is a legitimate concern of privileged discovery materials being improperly used. These are not co-defendants. These are two separate defendants. And Hank Brennan noted that they have shared discovery already. He said there's a history of it. Let's bring in our power panel now. Still with me, nationally known radio host John DePetro. I want to welcome in our legal eagles, Franz Borghardt and Casey Early. John DePetro, let me start with you, please. What do you think the judge should do?
You know, that's an interesting question, Julie, and it certainly caught everyone's attention when he did that. But what people need to understand is if you go back to that first article that came out, Gretchen Voss, Boston Magazine, she asked Karen Reed, her and her team, have you ever communicated with Turtle Boy? She said no. She asked Turtle Boy, have you ever communicated with the Reed team? He said absolutely not. It later was revealed that Karen Reed essentially was using him as an instrument, sigging him on the witnesses, encouraging to go after Jen McCabe, who did nothing wrong, Brian Albert did nothing wrong, Colin Albert, who wasn't even in the house. So this relationship they formed, where he basically, Karen Reed was even approving what he could put on his website. She leaked all discovery to him. She leaked the autopsy photos of John O'Keefe that we've seen where they claim it's dog bites. It's not dog bites. So make no mistake about it, he has been the instrument and the arm for Karen Reed in trying to create confusion and create this whole hoax conspiracy.
Yes, and you've known this for a long time, John. Many people have, and finally, we have someone saying it. Hank Brennan, finally, we have someone, thank goodness for him. I'm sure all these witnesses are waking up so grateful that finally someone is standing up for them and saying, no more of this bullying and harassment. We see what's going on. Down goes that house of cards. Casey Early, let me go to you next, please. Your thoughts on this?
You know, Julie, I have cases where I really had a good case for the defendant, and the defendant is the one that really messed it up. And in this case, Karen Reed appears to be appealing to the court of public opinion, wrong court. And I applaud the judge because I could hear it in her voice yesterday. I already knew it was something unethical because you can hear the shaking in her voice and how she was very cautious of what she said. So down goes that portion. And I also applaud the prosecutor. Oftentimes when I practice, I always inform the jury that the prosecutor is supposed to seek justice and not a conviction. And I really believe the prosecutor in this case wants a fair chance at trial. And unfortunately, he's unable to do that without the help of the court. So I really believe that the judge is going to make the proper ruling in this case because she's appealing to the wrong party and she's going to be the cause of her downfall in trial.
Casey, I agree with everything you said. And you know what I was thinking as you were talking, if we had Hank Brennan from the outset prosecuting this case, I don't think we'd be having this discussion here right now. He would have done it right from the beginning.
The first time.
Franz Borghardt, last but certainly not least, want your take, please.
Whose idea is this to get this attorney on the team? Is it Karen Reed's idea? Is it her legal team's idea? Because candidly, I think it's an unnecessary, distracting move. And look, they've got bigger fish to fry at this point. Now, I suppose it could be said that who is on the Karen Reed legal team may be changing in the very near future, depending on what comes out at our next court date with the judge with regard to this concerning information. Those are Turtle Boy's defense, Karen Reed's defense are two different cases. And yes, they're intertwined and connected. But if I'm both of them, I don't want to have intermingling attorneys at the bench during the trial. I don't think that that's a good idea for either of them.
Sure, Franz. You know, and you touched on something we want to explore as well, is the possible implications that can, happen here. If the judge finds that this was a deliberate misrepresentation on the court, she can do a number of things. Franz, could we talk about this? What comes to mind for you as possible consequences here?
Well, the extreme consequence is removing the attorney from the case, and I don't know that that happens. Bar complaint could happen, but remember, there's a ripple effect of this information. If you have an expert, one of the issues with any expert is their credibility and their bias. And, we heard like a drum being beaten. Hey, these federal witnesses have no reason to come here and lie. They're neutral and this, that, and the other. I think the bigger issue for the defense is not going to be who's still sitting at the defense table. I think the bigger issue for the defense is, look, court, you want to try your cases in the court of public opinion. You live by the sword, you die by the sword, and all of a sudden, everybody who's watching this is now like, well, wait a minute. I was drinking the Kool-Aid that these were neutral witnesses, but are they? And if any crack in the credibility happens, I can't trust you and I can't trust anything you're saying. That's a problem for Karen Read right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is huge. I mean, a pivotal day. It certainly was. John DePetro, I want to end the segment by asking you, you've been on the ground there, as we know, in the courtroom, talking to people in the community. You've had conversations with these innocent people, many of them very dear friends of John O'Keefe, the victim here. Could you tell us just how their lives have been affected? Because I feel like this story is the one that doesn't get told enough. And you've been one telling it, John, from the outset. Let's end the segment with these witnesses and what they've experienced, please.
Julie, their lives have been turned upside down. And, people at the end of your driveway, nonstop harassment. They've harassed a local business. But the McCabe family, they have children. The children face harassment. As much as people may say, turn off the TV or you don't go online, it's not a matter of that. You have some very strange and dangerous individuals that continually contact them, harass them, let alone call their phone at all hours. You had the rolling rally where they were in front of the house and pointing them out. They have been, some of their neighbors have turned on them. These are people who did, and I want to stress, they did nothing wrong. They were friends of John. They agreed to do the right thing, step forward, testify in this. It should never have been tolerated. The Commonwealth never should have let it get to this point. But make no mistake about it, whether it's Brian Albert or Jen McCabe, their lives have never been the same since this started.
And that is just horrible. They certainly do not deserve that. They deserve to be respected. And they're going to be back giving testimony perhaps in this retrial. And what will it look like? Will all the attorneys be there? Will witnesses be excluded? What is going to happen? As Franz noted, there could be bar complaints. If the judge has found there's a fraud, she's got an obligation to report that. So does Hank Brennan. This is really, really serious stuff that's being investigated here, and we'll continue talking about it. Thank you all for the great discussion. John DePetro, I know we've got to let you go. Thanks for everything today, and be sure to check out John's show, Road Patrol Live. Thank you much. And our legal eagles, Casey and Franz, are continuing to talk with us. We want you to do the same, please. We'll hit a break. When we return, here's what's next.